We're good. And now I will share my screen with the MOU, okay?
Perfect. Okay, so I was just giving everyone a little bit of a background on why we're even doing this. Basically, the hospital asked us to extend. It was mostly for financial reasons on their part. And at first, we weren't sure if we should even consider something like that, but we realized that it might be a really good opportunity to get some things that we needed and be even stronger for next year when we sit down and do a whole new contract negotiation. So what we have eventually come up with here is something that we as the bargaining team feel pretty proud to present to you, especially now that the environment has changed with COVID. This makes this offer especially good. So here's basically it. There are
Can
three.
you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's kind of small. I don't know if it's pretty small for everyone else, but I think it might be even too small to read.
Make it bigger. Is that better?
Kind of.
Okay. Not really.
Not really. I wonder if this percentage, the arrow kind of towards the top right with the percentage.
Yeah, I just did I did 150. Is that bigger?
Oh, maybe it's just not updating in real time because it still says 35.8 to me.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me try the 100 because that's what we did this morning and it worked okay.
Okay. So there's going to be 3 new shift designations that are above and beyond an FTE. The first one is a plus shift. A plus shift is a shift that you sign up for that works with your schedule before the unit schedule is finalized. So if you have a unit that self-schedules, which I think a lot of them do, and let's say you're a 0.9, so you're supposed to work 3 days every week. If you pick up a 4th day before the schedule is finalized, just when you're filling things out, that's now called a plus shift. And plus shifts are straight time. And the reason for that, unless of course it pushes you into overtime. But other than that, they are, oh, Rick, you joined us. Hey. I didn't know that Rick was going to be here. Are you good with me just keeping going, Rick, or do you want to jump in? Can he maybe not hear me? Okay.
Can you hear okay, Rick? It doesn't look like he can hear us.
Yeah, it doesn't, does it? Okay. Well, I'll just keep going then. So those would be called a plus shift. The reason that we decided not to make those time and a half is because they're really around the nurse's schedule. The nurse has a lot of time to decide these shifts and they work with more the nurse's preferences versus what the unit needs. So then the next level of shift that we decided was called a needs shift. And if you want to scroll down, Robin, we'll go to that section. Okay. A needs shift is a shift that has a need for nurses, so it's below core after the schedule is finalized. So everyone fills out the schedule, it goes to the nurse manager or whoever it is that finalizes the schedule. They take a look at it and they pick out, let's say 10 days that are below core after everyone has already picked up their FTE and filled out the schedule. Those get posted next to the schedule and those are now needs shifts because they're below core days, and those are offered at time and a half automatically. So this may very well be 6 weeks in advance that these shifts are offered at time and a half. The incentive being you now pick up days that work for the benefit of the unit, which is why they're now time and a half. They are a first come first serve shift. We have some language in there about like if it comes to 2 nurses who kind of sign up at the same time, what that would look like. That's all in there for detail, but basically it's first come first serve, and those are automatically time and a half. Then we have an even more incentive shift, what we're calling the critical shift. And a critical shift is basically any shift that is deemed critical by management. So they have full control over deciding when a shift becomes critical or not. It can be decided 6 months in advance that, let's say, Easter weekend looks really short, we're going to call some of those shifts critical, or it can be decided with 4 hours left in a shift to work that now suddenly we are critical. It is fully in their hands how they want to decide that. Just because a unit is short doesn't mean they're critically short. But the critical shift, if you agree to work it, is time and a half for the hours worked plus a $200 bonus. If you agree to work a critical shift and they send you home halfway through the day, you still retain that $200 bonus. That doesn't go away. That's a guaranteed for being willing to work the critical shift. So those are the 3 new shifts that we put in the MOU. That's kind of the big chunk of the MOU. We want to scroll down a little bit more here. This is the new wage scale that is part of this. It can be a little confusing to read these scales, but the most important thing to know is that by the time June 2021 rolls around, everyone will have had a 7.2% pay increase. Unless you have less than 1 year of experience by June 2020, then your increase is 5.5%. And there's only a handful of people, maybe 14 or so, that fall in there. But the rest of us can expect a 7.2% pay increase. So just to give you an example, we're looking at a wage scale. There's 2 different wage scales. Depending upon when your anniversary date is, you travel through the wage scale differently, but the end result is the same for everybody. It's just how you move through the levels. So we're looking at one between this coming June and December. So let's say you have an anniversary date. I'll use Rick again because he used himself as an example this morning. He is in July. So he would move. So let's say he was on step 6 right now. He starts at 3116. Then on June 1st, he's going to retain his step 6. So he'll move over and down and end up at that 3226. Then July will happen. He'll have his review. He'll go down to step 7, so 3291. And then on January 1st, he'll move over to 3340, which is a net effect of 7.2% of a pay increase. So the pay increase is broken down. Everyone gets 1.5% in June, 1.5% in January, plus a 2% whenever your annual raise is. Plus, we added a step to the top of the scale and the bottom of the scale that resulted in a 2% shift for everybody, making a total of 7.2. I hope I didn't muddy those waters too much. So then we'll talk about those 2 new steps. We added a new grad step. The problem that we were seeing was if, for example, we had a nurse who worked at Benefice for 14 months, and then they came to St. Pete's. We were putting them in the same step as someone who was a brand new grad with 0 months of nursing experience. And we decided that for recruitment reasons and honestly, just in all fairness, to honor people's experience, that we should have those in 2 separate steps. So new grad is anyone with under 1 year of experience. And then we now have a step 1 for those who are, 12 to 23 months of experience. The result of adding that new grad step is that 2% I talked about where the scale shifts down. And that will also go into effect on June 1st. So basically 3.5% of a pay increase on June 1st, 1.5 January 1st, 2% whenever your evaluation happens to be. Then on the top end of the scale, or the bottom, I guess, however you want to look at it, for our nurses with the most experience, who we all, of course, value tremendously and want to show how much we value them, we added a 24th step. So if you're a nurse who's currently capped out at step 23, things will look different for you in this next year if this is ratified. What will happen is you'll actually now move down the scale just as I showed everybody else, and you'll be treated the same as everyone who moves through the scale. So you'll forego your 3% annual lump sum in exchange for a 7.2% pay increase over the year. One of the big benefits of this is that this bumps now your hourly rate. So anytime you do come in extra for a picked up shift, a plus shift, a time and a half shift, a critical shift, you're now working, or will be by the end of the year, at a 7.2% higher rate than you have been in the past. And those extra hours were not counted towards the 3% annual lump sum. So this really is a more fair way to reward you for the hours you work. And then in subsequent years, you'll again be at the top of the scale after this year. You'll still get that 3% lump sum, but it is now, the net effect is now 7.2% higher because you're now a step 24. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. The wage piece can be really confusing. And if you're having a hard time following how you move through it, you can email Robin, and her email address is robin@mtnurses.org. And she can personally tell you where you are now and where you'll move to if you need that. You can also stop any member of the bargaining team in the hall or whatever, and we can walk you through it as well. So there's lots of ways to get more clarification on that if it's confusing, because I understand how it might be. The big thing to know is the 2 anniversary date, the 2 sections of anniversary date. If you fall between June and December, you follow one path of movement. If you fall between December and next June, you follow another, path through the scale, but the net effect is the same for everybody.
So if you see what I just put up on the previous document, the step down, your anniversary longevity step, if your anniversary date is between June 1st and December 31st, it occurs in this column. But if it occurs after January 1st, it'll occur in this column.
So administration told us that the reason why they had to do kind of a 2-phase pay increase, 1.5 in June, 1.5 in January, was that this fiscal year is now off to a really rocky start, unfortunately, with COVID. So this just gives them a little bit of financial relief. And I think we can all appreciate, in a climate where nurses are being laid off or having pay cuts, that this seems like a fair compromise, that we get a pay increase that we feel is earned, but that the hospital can do it in a way that makes more sense for them financially with our current climate. So the other part of the MOU includes new certification language for same-day services nurses. So if you are a same-day nurse and you have questions about that, go ahead and reach out to one of us or send an email or something. But basically, they just needed an update on their certification pay, and we made that happen. That was pretty basic language that got added in. So if you see that, that's why all the certification pay is there. There was just one change made to same-day services, just so that their certification more accurately reflects what they do in that department. What am I missing? Is there anything else that I didn't cover?
I think you got it.
Okay.
Just on the MOU, anything that's struck is language that will be deleted basically, and anything that's in red is new language.
No, that sounded great. Sorry, Charlotte, I was a couple minutes late at the beginning, so thanks for taking over for me. Appreciate it.
No, you're good. Yeah, and I don't know if you couldn't hear me in the beginning, but I was like, Rick, do you want to take over? Rick? And I was like, oh, I don't think he hears me. I'm just going to keep going. So, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Thanks for doing it. I appreciate it. Sounds great.
Have questions or concerns or anything that I can address or Rick can address or Robin? No?
Did you guys?
This is Margaret. I have a quick question, just to clarify.
Yeah.
So a need shift gets done before the schedule's finalized, and a need shift is after the schedule is finalized, and a plus shift is signed up on like the paper schedule before it goes final, right?
You got it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. A plus shift is straight time, and it's because you get to sign up for it, whatever's convenient for you before the schedule is even finalized. It's kind of hours, that are totally in the nurse's hands, hence being straight time. And then need shifts are all the shifts that are below core after the schedule has been finalized. So they're really, the unit needs you there, and so the incentive is not.
Perfect.
Okay. Similar to how like the ER currently does a needs shift, medical does a need. Most units are already doing a needs shift. This just realistically solidifies the language around the pay around it, because there's so much inconsistency unit to unit. So.
And what we've ran into is, like, we all know that a lot of us don't want to walk in the door extra unless we have an incentive to do so. So people were kind of, I don't want to call it gaming the system, but they were waiting until the shifts were offered at time and a half before they felt like it was worth their while to sign up. And so we thought, we all know this is happening anyway. Why not just like let them be time and a half from the beginning? Why dance around this, wait for the A of the day to call or wait for your manager to let you know, like, we know the unit's short that day. just get people committed to it, even if it's weeks in advance. That was kind of our thought, is that this is what's the reality is anyway, that people are really only or very frequently only working for time and a half extra anyway. So we might as well take the work off of A's of the days, frantically making phone calls, first thing in the morning, and just let people sign up for those shifts at time and a half in advance.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And I guess the only thing I noticed on here, or I guess I should say I don't notice, is I want to be clear. As it stands, we have a hotshot nurse now. And because of that role, we don't, and the way that it works, we don't do that whole after the third unit you go to, you get that shift change pay thing. Is there any way to word in that specific role so that it's exempt should people moving forward get into that role and decide, well, I want it, Is there a way for that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, unfortunately, so here's the kind of curses and blessings of the of just the year extension. So that is something absolutely let's look at when we go into bargaining and we open up the whole contract. We were trying to, St. Pete's didn't, in wanting to extend the contract, they didn't want to spend a bunch of time, money, and effort this year to sit down and discuss smaller details in the contract. And so what we wanted to do is get the biggest bang for our buck with the smallest package this year, so that we didn't have to sit at the table for hours and hours and open the whole contract up, but we could get what we felt was absolutely the most important things done. And so that's why it's kind of a small contract. Absolutely, that's something let's address when we go into bargaining next year and we open the contract up and start looking at all sorts of different language.
Gotcha. I apologize. I was just
nope, that's totally okay. Good question.
Yeah, I think, sorry, computer glitch. I think, Rick, you touched on a really important point there. That I think we do need to remind people that we saw your surveys. We know there were other issues that people had about education reimbursement and all sorts of stuff that came up in those surveys. We heard you, we promise, and we care about those issues too, but we're just talking about what was the most important thing in a 12-month window to make this work to our benefit. And we figured getting nurses in the door in a more fair way for those times where we are inevitably, going to have where we're short, and then getting us a good pay increase. We kind of put those at the top of the priority list, but that's not to say that other issues won't be addressed in a year. So I think we should really reassure people we did hear you. We took that survey and we took it to heart. But this is what we kind of prioritized as the top 2 things to get done in order to make this, like Rick was saying, a really small package, but had kind of the biggest bang we could get out of it. So.
And when the bargaining team, when the full contract opens up, we will begin full preparations, and that will include, surveys again.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys.
Of course.
We sure appreciate it.
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts?
I just a quick shout out. Thanks for all coming. I appreciate it. There's a lot of people on this call and that's good. Engagement's awesome. So thanks for everybody for being here.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Well, I'm going to pause my screen share here and then stop it. And Rick, you missed that we were contacted about recording one of these. So I recorded this one.
Perfect.
And I'm hoping I can figure out how to create a link and we can email a link out to everybody. So for anybody who couldn't get on, they could at least hear this one.
That's a great idea. Perfect. Sorry for sleeping in 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
You worked last night, Rick?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you for being
Oh
on.
my gosh.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's all right. Yeah, no worries. Thanks for all your guys' work. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Cool.